cupcakes.
Yes, do you have a reservation?
No, I'm just gonna get something to go.
Quite. Do you have a reservation?
No, I want just a cupcake.
And so you thought you'd just traipse on in and pick one up, did you?
Pretty much the plan.
All of Chef Maurice's creations are spoken for weeks in advance. He could fit you in, a week from Thursday, but it will have to be a vanilla, no frosting credit card.
For what?
To hold the reservation, sir.
For a cupcake?
This is Chez Gâteau de Cup.
Yes, place of cake of cup. I know. You make cupcakes, which are supposed to make people happy and childlike. But instead, you and the foodie cognoscente have corrupted them into fussy, heavy, cloyingly clever, and sickeningly sweet cups of condescension. And I think I shall now wage war upon you and your ilk.
Security!
Oh, at a cupcake place?
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's it, America. It is up to us to take back the cupcake from those who would keep us down. Cupcakes are the pastry of and for the people, not highbrow, snarf, or urbanated sharks. I'll be back, mister, and when I come, I'm bringing...
Although today's upwardly mobile cupcake may have an ancestor in the queen cake, a small individual pound cake with fruits baked in a paper cup. It was popular with upper crusty 18th century Brits. The pastry as we know it is strictly American fare, but that doesn't mean that its history is simple to trace. For instance, in American baking, there is the cupcake and then the cup cake. Now, the cupcake evolved out of an almost complete lack of standard weights and measures in colonial America. Not that most American households had the scales that made precision old world baking possible in the first place. When it came to volumetric measure, about all we really had was the Queen Anne gallon, which weighed 10 pounds. Anything under that, and, well, you were kind of on your own. Now, seeking convenience and consistency, American bakers reached into their cupboards for, ironically, a cup. Although it might not be the 8 fluid ounces we're used to today, it was something that colonial housewives could relate to. Now, the shift from weights to cups heralded in a whole new age of cake recipes, which came to be known as cup cakes, because the cup was the standard of measure. Now, what does this have to do with cupcakes? Well, that depends on how you look at it. Welcome to the average colonial kitchen. That's right. Back in the days before the enclosed iron oven, most cooking was done right here. Stews, beans, and whatnot simmered in Dutch ovens, meats roasted on spits, and a lot of baking got done too. But it was tedious, and large cakes were especially hard to pull off. And so folks got into the habit of baking lots of little bitty cakes in things like, that's right, cups. Heat-proof, of course. Batter would go in, and they would just set them right at the edge of the fire, and bingo, you could have a cupcake, which would also be a cupcake. Get it? Most cakes spring from this humble handful of ingredients. The differences between the many final forms come in part from the exact amounts, but more often than not, it's the mixing that matters. Most American cakes are born of the creaming method, in which sugar and or butter, shortening, are beaten until the sugar punches zillions of little holes into the fat, which are then blown up by the chemical leavening during the baking process. Such high-fat batters are tasty to be sure, but I find them too heavy for cupcakes. Thanks to a Los Angeles insurance salesman, we have an option. Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, in the 1920s, there was a Los Angeles insurance salesman named Harry Baker. Now, Harry wanted nothing more in life than to become a famous cake baker. After years of experimenting with different recipes, he finally came up with a light and delicate cake that shook Hollywood by a storm. It was called the chiffon cake. What was the secret? Harry wouldn't tell. For 20 years, his cakes were the stuff of legend, until finally, in 1947, he shared his secret with the most popular, albeit non-existent, baker in the land, Betty Crocker. A year later, Betty shared it with the rest of the world. The secret ingredient was oil. Rather than butter or shortening, Harry just skipped the solid fat altogether and went with cooking oil to create a fluffy golden cake. Of course, you can't beat bubbles into liquid oil, so Harry designed his chiffon to get its lift from the eggs themselves. But I'm putting the cake before the pan. Oven-proof cups, or mugs, in this case, make perfect baking vessels. The cupcakes that come out of these will be twice as big as your average paper-bound cupcakes, and that means they'll be twice as delicious. As is true of most batters, we will assemble a dry team and a wet team and then quickly bring the two teams together. For the dry team, we begin with 5 1/4 ounces of cake flour. By weight, please. Our cupcakes will not be cupcakes. To that, we will add a teaspoon of kosher salt and 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder, which will help to inflate the bubbles provided by the egg whites. Just go ahead and sift that together for lightness. Now, we're going to move over to the eggs. 1 ounce of regular old sugar, 5/8 teaspoon of cream of tartar, and 5 eggs. Come this way, please. When it comes to separating eggs, I use the quarantine approach, which ensures that if one of my egg whites becomes contaminated with any foam-destroying egg yolk, that it is not spread to the rest of the egg white pool. Here's how. Crack your egg. Drain out your white. I like to use the shell-to-shell method because the shell likes to hold on to the egg. There we go. Then the yolk goes here, shell there. We inspect, looks good, and goes to its final resting place. We repeat for each and every egg in the batch. I'll bring your egg yolks back over to your batter station and move to a large mixing bowl along with 5 ounces of sugar. We're going to beat these until they reach the ribbon stage, and I prefer to use my handy-dandy hand mixer. This one came from the hardware store, which is kind of nice. The mixture is much lighter in color, and you can see that is the ribbon stage. See how it kind of falls all over itself. This is ready for the next liquidous addition, which comes in the form of a 1/4 cup of water. Just room temperature is fine, and a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. Don't use olive oil for this. That would taste funny. Speaking of taste, we will add some flavor with a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Beat to combine. Once that looks good and smooth, you can add the dry mixture, but do this very, very slowly, or you'll toss it all over your kitchen. There, batter is done and ready for the eggs. A chiffon cake gets its leavening from the same source as an angel food cake or a soufflé, an egg white foam. Now, egg whites are pretty much born to foam due to their unique mixture of protein and water, okay? All we have to do is bust up the surface tension a little so they can start blowing bubbles. So, we already have our 5 egg whites here in a bowl. Going to add 5/8 of a teaspoon of cream of tartar and beat on high using the whisk attachment until it becomes foamy. Now, we have dealt with egg white foams a few times on this show, and I'm afraid that we have perpetuated a couple of myths. So I want to set this straight. First, temperature. For years, I've been saying that you should separate eggs when they are cold and whip them when they are warm. Well, truth is, with modern mixers, it just doesn't matter, okay? They deliver enough what's called shear to overcome any temperature issues. Now, the other thing has to do with cream of tartar, okay? Truth is, you don't have to add it after the whites become foamy. In fact, adding it right up front is better. Also, most recipes, including some of mine, don't take full advantage of tartaric acid's power. For top volume and the best texture, you ought to shoot for about 1/8 of a teaspoon per egg white, okay? That's why the funky amount, the 5/8 of a teaspoon. Why? Well, come here. Now, let's say for a moment that this twisted piece of ductwork is actually an egg white protein. Now, in its natural state, it's all balled up on itself. To make it culinarily useful, we need it to denature, stretch out, relax, and tangle up with other proteins. Now, we can do this just by thrashing the tar out of it, but it'll take a long time, and the resulting foam won't be very stable. It is a far, far better thing to mix said thrashing with a bit of chemical coaxing, okay? And that's where the cream of tartar comes in. See, cream of tartar is an acid, and acids lower the pH by bringing extra hydrogen ions to the party. Add enough of these to the protein, and they'll reach what's called the isoelectric point, and they will
relax. By adding more cream of tartar at the get-go, you start the protein party earlier in the process. And that means smaller bubbles, ergo a finer texture, and that translates to a lighter and more tender cupcake for you. The sugar is going to dissolve into the water phase of the whites, creating a syrup that will provide additional structure. But if we add this all at once, the proteins won't have room to do what they need to do, so go slowly. There we have it. Like weebles, stiff peaks wobble, but they don't fall down. Now, I like to work the egg whites into the batter in thirds, and we've actually put it into 3 different bowls to kind of prove the point. The first addition, I don't actually fold. I just beat it in as quickly as possible to lighten the batter. The second third of the egg whites, we will fold in gently using a rubber spatula. And the technique, as always, is simply to kind of push the spatula down and fold over, rotating the bowl, doing this as few times as possible. Third batch, same thing, only this one we'd like to get in even quicker. If you still see a little just kind of plain egg white in the mixture at the end, that's okay. Better that than overbeating. Now, this batter is delicate and ooey and gooey, almost impossible to pour, so I like to dose it out with a disher. Some people call it an ice cream scoop. I call it a disher. Now, we're looking for just 3/4 full on the mugs. We need room for expansion here. Now, whatever you do not grease these mugs or lube them in any way. This kind of egg foam needs something to climb. It has to be able to get hold of the cups. If we did this in just an ordinary cake pan, it would fall as soon as it comes out of the oven. Because we're using a relatively small amount of batter in a nice confined space, it should be able to hold on pretty nicely. Stash your mugs in the lower third in a 325-degree oven and bake for 30 minutes or until a toothpick comes out clean or the cupcake reaches an internal temperature of 205 to 210 degrees. In many 18th century kitchens, the use of cups for baking gave way to the iron gym pan, which of course was the precursor of the nonstick muffin tin, which we will employ. Of course, we could line this with paper cups. A lot of people don't think it's a cupcake unless they get the Christmas time effect of unwrapping the cupcake. You can use either paper or foil. But I will say this, the ones that come in the little tubes seem to fit better than the ones that come in the bags. Don't know why. Hey, let's make this next batch chocolate. Combine 1 teaspoon of kosher salt and 1½ teaspoons of baking powder with 4 ounces of cake flour and sift. You notice that this is 1¼ ounce less than in the first recipe. You'll see why in a minute. Now, with the sifting done, turn to the chocolate part. Add 1/4 cup of hot water to 1¼ ounces by weight of cocoa powder. Keep mixing and mashing until it reaches the consistency of a spackle. Now, since it acts a lot like flour in the final batter, this 1¼ ounce of cocoa powder replaces the 1¼ ounce of flour that we took out. Now that we have our chocolate spackle made, we will move to the egg yolks. 5, just as before, go into the mixing bowl with 5 ounces of sugar, just as before. And guess what? We're going to beat it to the ribbon stage, just like before. Once the ribbon stage is achieved, we will add the chocolate mash, the oil, and the vanilla. No use for water this time because we already stirred it into the cocoa. And the dry phase. Remember, speed kills. There. Now all we need is the egg white foam. 4 egg whites this time, plus, that's right, 1/8 teaspoon per egg white gives us 1/2 teaspoon of cream of tartar. We're going to beat this on high until it's foamy, then cut the speed, gradually add 1 ounce of sugar. Once it's incorporated, the speed will go back to high, and we'll continue to beat until stiff peaks form, probably about 2 minutes. When the foam is finished, we will deposit in 3 easy installments. The first stir-in will be a little tougher because this batter is definitely stiffer, so it's going to take just a few more seconds to make smooth. Just as before, we will employ our disher. Only this time, of course, we're filling paper cups, which are a little trickier because they tend to stick to the disher. Okay, these go in. Same time, same temperature. Oh, forgot about those. These are obviously, ready to come out. And I've already got a rack standing by for them to cool thoroughly on. Now, the chocolate muffins need to be right in the middle of the oven. So I'm going to add a rack here. There we go. 30 minutes. And do not rotate them. Do not open the door or the chiffon may fall. Although I do not agree with those who insist that a cupcake is simply a delivery device for frosting, I will agree that without a good frosting, a cupcake is, well, a little too much like a muffin. And I think that given the texture and flavor of these, that a nice buttercream would be in order. But we have one big fat question to answer. Who wants vanilla? Over here, who wants vanilla? Well, doesn't anybody want chocolate?
I do. I want chocolate.
Oh, sorry, kid. We're outnumbered. Vanilla wins. 6 ounces of room temperature unsalted butter plus 2 ounces of shortening go into our work bowl. Now, using the paddle attachment, we're going to cream on high until this is light and fluffy. Probably take 3 to 4 minutes, depending on the temperature of the room your butter came to room temperature in. Okay, next, we add 1 room temperature egg and beat till well combined. It'll take a couple of minutes at most. Thing, can you kill the alarm? Yes, it is a raw egg. And yes, it is potentially dangerous. I get my eggs from someone who grows chickens, so I'm not so worried. But if you are worried, I strongly advise you seek out pasteurized shell eggs at the Mega Mart. Well, yeah, you could technically leave the egg out, but then you'd have to remove the shortening, up the butter to 8 ounces, and then replace the egg with an ounce, well, tablespoon at least, of whole milk. It would be okay, but believe me, it would be kind of grainy. It wouldn't be very unctuous and delicious. So just make peace with the egg. Anyway, return this to high speed. All right. We are getting closer and closer to the end. But now we've got to work in an entire pound of confectioner's sugar. And obviously we can't just dump that in all at once or it'll blow up all over the place. So you're just going to go about a ½ cup at a time. Turn off the machine, add the sugar, and then slowly restart the machine. Let it work until that batch is in, and then keep repeating until the pound is gone. Finally, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Beat until the frosting is smooth and light, about 3 minutes. You can use your frosting right away, or you can refrigerate for a couple of days. But whatever you do, make sure that you let it come to room temperature before you attempt to apply it. Otherwise, it'll be so hard, you'll basically rip the top of your cupcake off. Now, some people like to apply this with a little piping bag, and that's fine. But I prefer this little miniature offset spatula. I think that's a nice job, not too fussy. Now, as far as other toppings, the only thing that I can think of that's appropriate is probably some form of
May I help you, sir?
Not at all. It is I who will help you. Eat this.
Oh, I think not.
Oh, I think so.
That was so awesome. Hey, mister, can I have another cupcake?
Sure you can, kid.
Thanks.
There you go. Listen, I want you to run on home and tell your mom you don't want to be a maitre d'. You want to grow up to be a baker.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
See you later.
See ya. Be careful on the street.
Okay.
Who knew that one puny little pastry could have so much positive power? You know, I got half a mind to bake up a couple hundred more of these and take a drive over to Washington, D.C. Yeah. See you next time on Good Eats.